Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live stream today. Thanks so much for joining. We are talking about expenses and how much does it really cost to go to business school. I'm here with, let me just mute this. So I'm here with Sam. Most people who come to the channel and watch our videos, you all know us, but we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves for the people who are seeing this for the first time. I'm Shovik. I'm a second-year student at the University of Michigan Ross School of Business. I just finished graduation and I'm sort of getting ready for my job in Seattle. I'm going to join Amazon as a product manager. And I'm here with Sam. Sam was my roommate in Michigan, and he's going to be my roommate in Seattle. Sam, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey all, Sam from Michigan, just graduated and hopefully still headed to Microsoft. If not, I guess I'll get a job at Dunkin' Donuts.
I think we'll both fit right in there. We are going to look at business school expenses. And Sam, I know you have reservations about this topic, so I'm very interested in hearing about your thoughts on this. But we wanted to also do profile evaluations. Since the last profile evaluations video, I've been swarmed with profile evaluations. We will do them. Just hold tight. We have scheduled one profile evaluations videos on Saturday and another one on Sunday. So we'll two of those next week. It's just that this video was scheduled, and I wanted to talk about money and how to really estimate costs of attendance. So we are doing this video, but make sure to tune in next week on Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to get to that too. A couple of housekeeping things before we jump into the topic. I'm sure most of you saw the online GMAT video that I did twice. The first one was with some experts speculating about what this means, and then the second one was from our experiences of taking the GMAT. I took the GMAT earlier this week, and it was a really good experience. I enjoyed taking the test, and we talked about that with two test takers who also took the test in the same week as me, and also GMAT prep expert Haley from Veritas Prep. So go check that out. I'm just here to mention that we are going to do a follow-up on Friday. Hopefully, I will get my score by Friday, and I'll be able to talk about some of the other scores that have come in. So Friday, we have the GMAT score video. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we'll have two profile evaluations videos. Awesome. So with that said, please drop a like to this video. It helps us get to more people. Subscribe to the channel. It helps you get notified when videos like these come in. Also, if you're on GMAT Club, we send out notifications on GMAT Club, and there's a big orange band on top so that you know when the video is going to be. But often, we have videos every weekday between the 8 a.m. to like the 10 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, so with that said, Sam, let me ask you this. So I know you took some loans and you financed some of your MBA yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you were thinking of budget, like let's say you got into Ross and you got into a bunch of other schools, whatever, and you're trying to figure out, okay, fine, I have a business school admission, and I want to figure out how much is this actually going to cost. So what's the first step that you took? And because you're from the US, I think your experience is a little bit different than mine. And then I'm going to lay it out how it was for me as an international student.
Yeah, it was really lay out all the different kind of line item expenses, what is the tuition, and kind of break it up by year, because you'll have different cash flows coming in. Hopefully you'll have a internship money with a good chunk of salary coming in to help fund something. So the first year was really what's going to be the tuition, what's going to be the cost of rent. Health insurance is a big thing to not go over, and then really try and get an estimate about food, maybe recreational, and really try and get an estimate about, and so just kind of break down all the different things that are going to cost money and see what's a reasonable estimate, probably go a little bit more just to be conservative.
Right.
And that was really my process.
Yeah, it was similar for me, but I think one big thing that I had to also check is where I'm going to get that loan from, because I don't think most Indians have like $200,000 lying around. Like, kudos to you if you do, but It's mostly your dad, and you should pay your MBA for yourself. Anyway, so I think we also have this added thing of like getting international loans or getting a co-signer living in the US and all that stuff. But we'll talk about that stuff at a later time, like how to actually finance this stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that you mentioned, the line items. So the first item that I wanted to go through was the tuition costs, right? So I can speak about Ross. So at Ross, our first year tuition, I think, was close to $70,000. And our second year tuition was very similar. It was $70,000, but because I graduated early, I front loaded a bunch of courses. I got a $15,000 refund. And I think it can go up to like 20 if you max out, and I think it can go up to like 20. I think one of our roommates did that, who is very meticulous about saving money. Um, so in tuition, in some, I think the overall cost in most business schools touches about 140. And I think some schools are slightly more expensive than others. Like, for example, I think in some schools you'll have it touch 150, and some schools would be close to 135. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's going to be right in that ballpark.
Awesome. So that's the easy bit, right? Because that's sort of constant. You have no control over that, and it's just going to suck that money out of you. So I think some of the variables are also more important here. So I wanted to just touch on the living expenses. And by living expenses, I'm mostly talking about maybe rent and how much you spend on food and what's like your daily. So tell me a little bit more about that. How was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think a rent, once you get that established, kind of goes more into the thing you can't, it's going to be hard to control because most of these are college towns. And
Right.
even if in small town America, like, where we were with Ann Arbor, the rent was still fairly high because you're talking about a huge college town. There's a
Yeah.
huge demand coming in.
Ann Arbor
Um,
is also like more expensive than Chicago. So it
yeah.
was very expensive.
Yeah. So there's that. And then a big other one is food. I think a big thing with food, and this carries on after MBA, is really I tried to limit the amount of times I would eat out. You can get so much more food if you cook for yourself. And, you and I learned how to cook and had fun with it as well. So I think that's really a big one that can really kind of help you in the long run.
Yeah, same. I agree. I did eat out a fair bit in my MBA because I just like eating. And Ann Arbor has some good restaurants, so I wanted to try them a lot. The Korean place was really good. So no, yes, absolutely. So rent and food are the biggest chunk of your expenses. I think if you are just setting up your own place, we were lucky because we got a place with furniture, so we did not really have to buy furniture. But if you're getting a place that is completely unfurnished, you may have to pay some money for that as well. So let's talk numbers for that. So both of our rent was the same.
Yeah.
Um, I was paying about, I think, $1,000 a month, like 1,100 something.
Yeah.
So that's what I was paying. We were, by the way, for people who just want to make sure what we're paying for, we had Munger graduate residency, which is like a graduate dorm sort of a thing. But you get your own room. Like there's a giant living room. I was sharing that with 5 other people, including Sam. So, but the living room is like 1,000 square feet or something. Like it's probably more than 1,000 square feet. It's huge, and they have like twos of everything, like 2 fridges, 2 ovens, 2 microwaves, and all of that stuff. So we were paying about 1,100 for the rent, and that was mostly cooking food most of the time. So for groceries, we would probably go like once in 2 weeks, and we would spend maybe like $150 for the 2 weeks. So we'd end up spending about $300 a month on groceries, which sort of tallies up to like 1,400. And I think there were some other expenses in living. We did not have to pay like electricity, utilities, internet, and all that stuff. But if you do, it generally caps at like $150. I would say 1,500 is sort of for rent and basic food is a fairly decent estimate. And it can be a lot cheaper. Like we would often eat steaks because we're cooking at home. So we felt that cooking at home, you can also cook like fancy stuff and it's pretty cheap. So you could do that. But I would say 1,500 is a good guess. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tried to keep it within like 75 per week for groceries at the max. I think sometimes I was able to do it for like 50. So
Yeah.
that 50, 70, and that wasn't like starving myself or anything. That was
Yeah.
very comfortable. So yeah, I agree with all those expenses. I think our rent was like a little closer to 1,000, not
Yeah.
1,100, but for other people, it could be 1,100.
Right. And then I want to move to like recruiting expenses. And I think I had a few of these, and I think you had a few of these too. So I think it would vary a lot depending what you're recruiting for, and it's also going to depend on where your school is. Like for example, we were in Ann Arbor, which is actually very close to Chicago. So we were like 4 hours, 5 hours away from Chicago in a car. And so let me just lay out how it is if you're in Chicago. So if you're recruiting tech from Chicago, you end up going to Seattle or the Bay Area a fair number of times. So I went to Seattle and the Bay Area at least 2 or 3 times in the whole year. One for a case competition, one for a trek that Michigan was organizing, and one just to network and just to go and find some people to talk to. And so the only thing that was paid for was the case competition, and I had to pay for the other two. So the tech trek overall, Sam, you did the tech trek too, right?
Yeah, I wish I didn't, but I was out there anyway, right? So it didn't matter.
Man, we got lucky. I'm pretty sure, like, if you didn't, I'm pretty sure there are ways to get something out of that too. Um, so I would say the tech track, you have to like front your airfare. And I think that airfare is like depending on where you're going from, it's anywhere between 500 to $600, and then you also have to pay for your stay. I think that's again like $500 to $600. That's $1,000, and then you eat out because you can't cook while you're in a hotel. So you end up spending about like 300-400 more. So it easily sets you back by 1,500. What do you think? Was it less, more?
I mean, for me, the tech trek was less because I had somebody to stay with out there. I was going out there anyway for during the fall break. But yeah, no, I agree. I think with recruiting expenses, I mean, the good ones are when you're in the interview pipeline or like the competition with a company, you know, they'll refund you for all those expenses.
Yeah.
But you got to front some of them. You got to front all the money.
Yeah.
That's so definitely have some reserves for that. I mean, yeah, I think it sucks because, you know, you kind of have to think in the back of your mind, is this going to be worth the price of admission, so to speak? And I think with anything, you got to really kind of ask around and ask people, did they really get what they wanted out of these trips? Because like the trek can be very expensive. And depending, I think the one for us at least, the one to San Francisco, I thought and I didn't go on that one, but from what I heard, that sounded to be much more fruitful than the one to Seattle, which I thought, you know, I feel bad for the people that weren't going to go there to Seattle anyway for fall break.
Yeah. Yeah. So but we got lucky because we were doing tech. If you are doing, let's say, for example, banking, if you're doing banking, then you need to that's a big line item because you're going to end up going to Chicago or going to New York City almost every week or every other week for at least the first couple of months. And each of those trips would be at least for like a 3-day thing. And each of those trips would easily set you back by $700-800 per trip.
Yeah.
And maybe it's closer because it's closer to your school. But think about this: if you're going to a school at the West Coast, and if you're recruiting banking, first of all, why did you go to the West Coast school?
Yeah.
But anyway, even if you did go there, you'll end up spending a fair amount of money.
Yeah, I think for like investment banking, like, you know, from people from Michigan, we're very successful at it, but the recruiting process is a lot of hard work and it costs them a lot of money and they didn't get refunded for it. They had to go basically, I think
Right.
Thursday they flew there and would fly back Friday night. So you're talking about a round trip cost. But they tried to do Spirit and stuff to limit it, and you need one night over if you don't know anybody over there. So, and you had to
Yeah.
do that like 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row. So if you want to do banking, definitely take that into consideration, and maybe you may want to, target a school more in the Northeast than somewhere like Michigan.
Right. So I could see how this can be a zero cost for recruiting, especially if you're doing consulting.
Yeah,
The only way you may not have to spend any money if you're doing consulting. So most consulting companies, if you're going to a top 10, top 15, top 20 business school, most consulting companies would come to campus to recruit. They're nice like that. So they would come to campus, and they will not just come to campus for the interview, but they will also come to campus for your networking events.
yeah,
So you really don't have to go. The only way you need to you could spend money for recruiting consulting is if you are trying to go out of your way to network with them, like by visiting offices and stuff. I did that because Chicago was super close, but you don't really have to.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
if you move to final rounds, and then you'd have to travel because final round interviews often happen in their office spaces. Then they reimburse you, and
Yeah.
more often than not, you don't even have to front the money because they'll book your tickets, they'll book your hotel, they'll give you credits on Lyft and Uber, and that's it. You're pretty sorted.
And I thought consulting, I think that could be a zero cost one, to be honest. I thought everybody was super nice if you network with them, or even if somebody referred, contact and gives you that contact. People were always very friendly to jump on a phone call in between
Yeah,
their work. And that carried a lot of weight. They remembered you.
yeah,
I think tech can be close to zero if you do it all electronically, which LinkedIn, email and over the phone works just as well with tech. And then you rely on the ones that come to campus as well.
right,
I think investment banking is really the one that you're going to have to pay some money for that recruiting process.
right. So as I can tell, the living the recruiting expenses can can range from zero all the way to $5,000 a year. So that's that's a lot of variability, but that's also a lot of costs. So I'm
But
going to think at that.
I
Yeah,
think it's something you want to set some money aside, because recruiting is the real reason why you're at an MBA, and you want to do whatever it takes. And it's not like do everything that you want to, whatever really makes sense and whatever leaves a strong way to get a referral or an in with a company, you want to do it. And so
right.
you want to have the money to be able to do that, because some of it costs something. Because I know people who recruited for airlines and would take trips to the headquarters after setting up a coffee chat with somebody. And I think that really worked for them. A lot of people and a lot of companies still like it. If you show that kind of extra effort, it really sends a strong message. So you want to be able to do that if you have to, and if it would lead you to getting something stronger with that company.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Awesome. So, by the way, feel free to ask questions. We'll take questions after we are done with every single line item. We are running a little behind, I guess, because we only have 10 minutes left. Okay, so next one is going out, partying, eating out. Sam, you partied a lot. How much did you spend on that?
I did not, because I think we were staring at each other watching Netflix on the weekends. I think a lot of people did at MBA. So, I mean, with us, what was it? They had $100 thing, and that was your every Thursday night, and you got
Yeah.
free drinks. So
Yeah.
there was that.
But you had to fight for the drinks, though. It was almost like
Yeah.
the purge out there.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think with this one, it really depends on who you are and what's going to make you happy. But I know plenty of people that did a ton of dinner parties, house party. They kept it inside. They weren't going out to restaurants and stuff, and they were having just as fun of time with their friends. And I think that lowered the cost. And I think people were totally in for that. So I think that would be a good way to see the people you want to see, have entertainment for the night, but still kind of keep the expenses low.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You can, again, this is totally in your control, right? And there's a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but there's a lot of opportunities to waste a lot of money away. just by buying, hyper overpriced alcohol in really ugly bars. So I would be a little bit cautious on this. You don't want to, if you're the kind of a person who actually gets energy from meeting people, getting a drink with them, and just like talking in a large group, more power to you. I don't know how you live with yourself, but if you, I'm only kidding. If you derive energy from that stuff, there's a lot you can do to minimize some of your expenses. Like it doesn't have to be more than $100 a month. You can totally do a decent dinner out for like 15, $20. Um, so I would say, like it can go either way, but I would try to limit that. I mean, because of just the sheer number of people in business school, and there's a lot of people with a lot of money, and a lot of people like splurge. For example, like I was shocked with how many international students I met with so much money that it's sort of like, okay, are you guys coming from the same geography that I am? And the other thing that I would also recommend here is just learning how to cook. This saves
Yeah.
you so much money because you shouldn't really eat out. Like I would often eat out because I was lazy, but not because I was hungry, because I always had food at home, or I always had options of eating food at home. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I would cap it to like maybe $200 a month, but I wouldn't go more than that. Like anybody who does is, I would say, making a mistake, but to each his own. The last one is other expenses, and I have a lot to talk about this one because this one is subjective. It's also different across schools. So, Sam, when I say other expenses, I mean a bunch of things. I mean different treks. We did M treks in our first year. We also traveled between semesters, doing our own thing. And
Yeah.
also, a lot of people did treks that Michigan students organized, like the C trek, the I trek, the J trek, the N trek, whatever. So, tell me a little bit more about that. How much did you spend on these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the treks and so the trips with that are affiliated through the school, before school, during schools, I mean, they're expensive. So I think the one was to Portugal before the school started was $2,000,
That's
$3,000.
M trek, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, like looking back at it, it was a good trip. I liked the people that went. But you're kind of like you go because you think it may help you with recruiting, and it did not at all. I got met some nice people, but on the backside, I wouldn't have gone. And I know plenty of people who didn't go, and not only did they not miss out on any social thing or making friends, but they didn't miss out on any recruiting thing either. So
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, it really depends on who you are. But for me, I'm not that kind of 100-person group going to somewhere with everybody you go to school with. So I spent a good amount on a trip in between the first year and second year, but that was just me and my girlfriend, and we saw you over there.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that a lot more. So yeah, for me, I think it was best that I avoided those kind of trips because they were going to be way too expensive, and I wasn't going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, so I somewhat agree. I did Amtrak in Brazil. So by the way, for people who don't know, Michigan has Ross has something called the Amtrak, which sort of is like a trip before the school even starts, and it's a really good way to like get to know people and get to know like MBA twos, and like you go on a group of like 12, 10 to 12. Like you have like 5 or 6 MBA ones, and you have 5 or 6 MBA twos. So I prioritized trips based on how cheap they were. So, and I got a really cheap Brazil trip. So I don't regret that at all because my MBA twos were awesome. Like they were like some really, really cool people. And to be honest, I checked this, and if I actually made the exact same trip, it would probably cost me more because they were doing this with this travel group who gave us a discount because we were like doing things in bulk. So it was a really good trip. I think I spent about $2,500 in it, or maybe slightly more. But it was a 12-day thing. We went to Brazil, and we went to 4 different places. We went to a bunch of different islands, like spend time on a boat. Things that you don't get any real value out of, but I guess it's a good thing to do. Once I did scuba diving, it was fun. And also, like, the MBA can be a very heavy experience, so it felt good to start that with not doing much. Having said that, you can totally avoid it.
Yeah.
I get a lot of prospective MBAs asking me, "Hey, this is too expensive. Should I go? Do I really need to go?" There's a lot of FOMO in MTrek, and there's a lot of FOMO because the MTrek is a big deal, but there's also a lot of FOMO because once people come back, that's all they talk about for like a month or two. But it doesn't matter. Like, you can totally not go, and more often than not, because the groups are randomized, you could have MTrek people that you don't see much in the rest of
Yeah.
the
I mean, I think most schools are kind of set up similar. You're with a group of people for the first year. That's gonna be or anybody you're a roommate with. That's gonna be your core group. You can make plenty of friends without going on MTrek, and you most likely won't have anybody in your core group that's in your MTrek. For us, at least. So, I think you'll be good. I don't think you need it. And if going back in time, I wouldn't have done it.
Right. So that's the MTrek. That's about $3,000 on average. I think Kellogg has one. Kellogg calls it Quest. I think most business school has something like this. So and then you have treks throughout the year. So for example, I did a trip between my first and second year right after my internship, and I was like, okay, I made decent money in my internship, so why not? And I did not really spend a lot of money on this trip. So we went to Europe, we went to Berlin, and we went to Florence, Rome, and etc. And we had a lot of fun, and we were like saving money because we were doing Airbnbs and all that shit. So, by the way, I did this replacing the MTrek because I didn't want to lead an MTrek. And I would love to lead an MTrek. I just didn't want to like be stuck in a place with a bunch of people I don't know. There you go. My preference is really clear. So you spend about, like, I don't know, maybe I think I spent about $5,000 in these two trips, once before the term started and once in between the first and the second year. And then you also have a lot of trek opportunities within the business school. Like, for example, people will do spring break, and there's a Colombia trek, which I think costs about $2,000. There's a Japan trek. There's an Israel trek. There are a lot of treks, and people have a lot of money to just throw around. Like, people decide to go to Japan like a week before on a random drunk weekend. So I wouldn't do that. But if you want, more power to you. And if you really want to go all out, treks can cost you like easily $10,000. Like $5,000 was the two treks that I did. I wouldn't call them treks, more like trips. And then you had the other two, which can also cost about $5,000 to $6,000. Okay, so those were all the expenses. So let's really tally it up very quick. So our tuition cost was close to like about $140. Our living expenses was close to $1,500 a month, or slightly less than that. So that comes to about 18,000. So we're at 160. For recruitment, I spent about maybe $2,000 for one trek or slightly more. So we are at 160, and then for going out, we sort of, I think 100, 150. I think that's pretty reasonable. Maybe like 1,500, so it doesn't matter. And for other expenses, so it's 5,000 ish. So in sum, we ended up spending about $170,000. That was sort of my total, like 170 to 180. And there are some other hidden expenses here too, because like, let's say if you go to the summer recruiting and you have to sort of pay rent there, so you're paying double rent. Sometimes there are some lease issues. All of those things can happen. But 180 to 190, 170 to 180 if you're frugal, and 190 to 200 if you're living a decent but less frugally. And it can go up to like 210, 220 if you splurge all the money you make or your parents make. So that's sort of our ballpark. All right, so we're going to take some questions. Feel free to bring questions in. This took way longer than I thought it would. I thought this would take like 10 minutes. Um, okay, so how much does the cost escalate if you're married and your spouse is going to accompany you? Depends on the spouse and depends on how much you're paying for her. Mostly, if that would probably mean a slight increase in rent because you're probably going to take a two-bedroom apartment, and it's going to probably increase some of your grocery and some of your food and some of your eating out costs. But that's pretty much it. Sam, do you think that makes sense or?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, also, if you go on any trips or treks with them.
Yeah, and if you go on treks, a lot of people actually take their spouses too. So $1,000 on rent is a lot. What are the cheaper options? No, it's not a lot, Vivek. It's actually one of the cheapest places in Ann Arbor. But we had a really good deal, and you also not everybody gets Munger, so we got lucky, and things are a lot more expensive out there. So a lot of
That's normal rent, like that's around the normal for a big college town, even in where you have 5, 6 roommates. If you have your own room, it's gonna come to around that area, So
yeah.
Just the way it is in the US.
Exactly, and also if think about this: if you're going to Berkeley instead of Michigan Ross,
Be more.
rent is not 1,000. Your rent is 2,000 or slightly more. Rent is probably 2,500. Like one-bedroom apartments are crazy expensive. Okay, with the current situation, I knew this would come up, and the whole immigration freezing and probable drop in international applications, is there a chance of MBA tuition costs coming down in the future? Yeah, absolutely. If they do the MBA online, you should ask for a lower tuition. I don't know. I think a lot of schools haven't really made up their mind yet, and it's not their fault because they don't know. They don't know how much of the program will be online. And I think there is some certainty that some part of the program will have to be online. It will not start in July, August, because there's no way. The some of it will definitely be online, but the cost does depend on how much of it is online. So it would definitely change, but you will find out more. Did you account for all the costs beforehand? Were these expenses and a fuel expense surprises? I was surprised. I was very surprised because I did not account for treks. That was something that I did not know how expensive those were. I did not account for how expensive food can be. I, as a person, like food a lot, and I like different kinds of food. So I like to experiment. I like to go to different restaurants. So it adds up, man. So, and especially if you're feeling really great, let's say you got the best job in the world, you want to splurge, and then you don't even have money from the job, but you are already spending the money you haven't earned. So it can add up. Sam, did you have any surprises?
I think the surprises are there's some school events, that happen on Thursday or Friday that, you say, hey, I'm not going to go. And then maybe 1 out of 5, you end up talking yourself into going. And so that may be a surprise event, or maybe you have this plan to not eat out and you end up eating out. So there's little things like that. I think the biggest thing is when you estimate your costs, you want to have it be more conservative. So you want to have a little more cost, but built in your budget, because you want to have the money to do the things you need that'll make you happy or that'll help you with recruiting.
That makes sense. Quick question. Thanks for the session. You're welcome. Would you recommend having a separate room or share the room? Nobody shares a room, right? So have your own room. Please don't share a room. Having your own room is super important. What if you have calls? What if you have calls with companies and the other person you're sharing a room with also have calls? Once you're out of college, the whole thing of sharing a room goes away, which is also, I hated some of the treks. Now, some of the treks were sharing arrangements with a room. I'm a grown adult. I will never share my room ever again, unless it's a pet.
Here's a good question. Can I click it?
Go ahead.
Oh, wait. I think it's Vivek. How to finance 180 considering you have no savings? I think that's a good question. I can't click it though.
I can't find it.
1235. 1235 is the tag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. How to finance about $100,000 considering you have no savings? First of all, why don't you have any savings? I'm kidding. It's perfectly fine to not save. You're just out of college and you're probably have jobs that don't pay that well. Sam, why don't you start?
Yeah, Vivek, I think it's a good question. I mean, I think that, if you're an international student, you want to take out that international loan that Chobik took out or something similar. I think you're going to have to ask your parents. I mean, I had to ask my parents. I had some savings, but not anywhere near that. And it's really, if you don't have to have the 180,000 right now, kind of take it in small chunks, 6-month chunks. How much am I going to need in the first 6 months, the next 6 months, and kind of break it down like that? Because if you get the internship you want, you're going to get 20 to 30,000 from salary over a summer internship. So that's a nice way to fund some more.
Yeah.
So I would look at it like that.
Don't forget taxes, though. Your summer
Yeah.
internship salary gets taxed. I was in California, so I was taxed the highest. You may get some of it back, but I haven't seen my money yet. So you will get some of it back, but it'll take time to get to you.
That's why you go to Seattle. No state income tax.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, what are the ways to finance those off-sticker costs? So generally, your loan is based on cost of attendance. So your loan should be able to take care of it. And if your loan did not take care of it, then you have two options. Either you ask your parents, ask your family, or you fund it from your savings or your stocks or whatever. But generally, especially if you're a student from the US, you should be able to get 100% cost of attendance loan. And if you're doing from India and you're doing Prodigy, for example, Prodigy has a cap of like 80%. They only fund up to 80%. So I had some savings and I borrowed a little bit of money from my parents. The reason why I had to borrow money from my parents is I had some savings in like long-term mutual funds. And if I took all the money out, I would lose out on a lot of potential interest. And it's not a lot of money. It's like a couple $1,000s. But I didn't want to take them out because taking a long-term mutual fund out makes no sense.
So the couple of thousand didn't want to do that to increase your salary like 84 times.
Fine. Okay. So Sam, you had a lot of opinions about nitpicking. Go ahead.
I mean, I think it's, you want to fund yourself, but these are just like, this is the cost of admission, so to speak. This is the cost to the better life, the better salary, the better job. So I think it's something where figure out the logistics, but like, don't beat yourself up too much. Like, you've analyzed it, you thought it's worth the risk, you got into a good school, and really focus your energy more on how can I improve my recruiting pipeline? That's really the most important thing. If you do that, the MBA, the job you get is going to pay for it and 10 times it. So figure out the logistics, but you don't beat yourself up over nitpicking.
Okay, best behavior around my parents now. Yes, absolutely. Till you get them 100%. Thanks for that comment, Divya. So Prodigy Finance versus Empower Financing. Who do you recommend? I did Prodigy Finance. I don't think Empower was an option for me back then. Wow, I'm referring to my MBAs back then. So I did Prodigy Finance, and I had some money to front the rest of the 20%. I know most schools now have newer international student MBAs, and a lot of schools will co-sign for you. So the Ross just released an option. If Ross had done that when I was applying, I would definitely take that option, because you don't want that uncertainty. You don't want to call your parents in the middle of your term like, hey, I ran out of money, I need some money. Even international wire transfers take time. So no. So take as much money in loans as you can. It's like a $10,000 difference. It doesn't matter. So just take as much as you can. Okay, so we're getting a lot of new questions, but very, very India specific. I'm going to ask you guys to go to gmatclub.com, post there. I have a Q&A where I have 15 profiles pending. So I'm going to get to that today. Quick housekeeping before we end. Like the video, it really helps us out getting to people. Subscribe to the video, it helps you out because you get notifications. And this Friday, if everything goes well, I'm going to do a score review. I'm going to talk about what I got in my GMAT. So that'll be fun. I don't know yet, but I want to schedule it on Friday because I think I'm going to know before then. I'm very excited. Fun fact, I'm taking the GRE at home. I asked Sam to do it too, but he flatly refused.
No.
I'm taking GRE at home on May 9. Of course, we'll do a video. We'll compare GRE at home versus GMAT at home. So stay tuned for that. But this Friday, we'll do the GMAT score. So make sure you check the link. I'm going to post the link in a few minutes. And then this Saturday and Sunday, same time, 9 a.m. Pacific, we'll do profile evaluations because I got a lot on my thread. We're going to deconstruct some of those. And if you want Sam or me to check your profile, feel free to post on GMAT Club, post on that thread, tag us. Sam's username is PD2PMM because he was a public defender and now is going to be a product manager. And my username is Shovik101990 because I was too young when I made this username, so I didn't really have a cool username. So, all right, Sam, do you have any parting thoughts about financing the MBA?
Just don't get FOMO'd into doing other people's thing. Do you? And focus on recruiting.
Awesome. Yeah, focus on recruiting. Focus on what you came here for. That's more important. All right. Okay. So we're gonna take your leave. It's past 40 minutes. Wow. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Check out the videos from next week, and I'll see you guys next week on Friday with my GMAT score.
See everybody.
See ya.